Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular monthly meeting of the Meridian Library District at 7 o'clock, and the meeting is now called to order. I'm happy to see a lot of people here tonight. Many of our meetings are rather mundane. My kids say that mundane is just a synonym for boredom, but hopefully it won't be too boring for you here tonight. We welcome those here in the room and those joining us online. As a board, we take seriously our responsibility to represent all 130,000 plus residents of the Meridian Library District, whether they know we exist or not, or whether they ever attend a meeting or not. That being said, we're happy that you're here and happy for your interest in the library. We also acknowledge that this meeting is being broadcast and there are many people watching from home. We'll go right into the agenda tonight. Item number 2 on the agenda is public comment. As a board, we adhere to Idaho's open meeting laws. The best description I've heard about how those open meeting laws work is that they give everybody a ticket to the play. However, they do not necessarily give everybody a seat on the stage. The caveat to that is that we do allow, under the board's discretion, public comment in forums such as this tonight. Information about our public comment policies is contained on the policies of the district's webpage. We value feedback from our constituents and offer multiple avenues for them to provide that feedback. Those include being able to post comments on our webpage, to email members of the board as individuals or the board in general, and also in forums such as tonight's meeting. A few people have signed up to share their comments this evening. Before we begin, let me outline a few guidelines and reminders. In the interest of time and for meeting efficiency, we'd like everyone to please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person or less. We have up to 20 minutes allocated for public comments on tonight's agenda. If I appear to not be looking at you while you comment, please don't take offense. I'm probably just looking at my stopwatch to keep time. As with all events in the library, we expect participants to adhere to the library's code of conduct. This includes comments that could be perceived as threatening. A few examples: if someone were to come up to the board and plop down legal paperwork and say, "You are hereby served," that could be perceived as threatening. Or if someone hypothetically were to get up at the podium and say, "Concerned citizens are watching you," that also could be perceived as threatening. A little aside about that, when I have heard those comments in the past, I think about, I have flashbacks to my high school dance days in the early 80s when Sting came out with "Every Breath You Take," and every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. And I can't help but think of that when I hear those comments. So on the positive side, some advice that my wife gave me years ago is that the best way for someone to listen to what you have to say and consider it is to use I statements instead of you statements. If you're not sure what that is, ask the person sitting next to you on either side, and I'm confident that either one of them will know what that means. A few more things. As per Idaho's open meeting laws, public comments are not a Q&A session, nor is it a debate. Please direct your comments to the board as a whole, not to individual members on the board. Do not direct your comments to library staff, nor to members of the audience. Board members will listen to your comments, but we are unable to respond during the meeting. Speaking only for myself, after the meeting, I'm happy to talk to anybody and have a dialogue. Also, please no applause or verbal outbursts as people speak. So thanks for listening to my preamble, or maybe it's my ramble, and thanks for helping keep things polite and respectful. This is our opportunity to engage in civic dialogue, and let's show our kids and grandkids how that's done. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people signed up to speak tonight. Hopefully we'll have time to get to all of them. It is, let's call it 7:05, so we'll go up until about 7:25, time permitting. First on our list to speak is Kirk Van Allen. Mr. Van Allen, if you join us at the podium here, please state your name, tell us where you live, and you don't need to give us your full address unless you want me to put you on my Christmas card list.
My name's Kirk Van Allen. I live in Meridian, and I have been a frequent participant here at the library
All right. When we do come to the library, we do see our family reflected. I do have gay children, and we have been able to check out books that reflect our family. And when we see these bands here in Meridian, and the so-called concerned citizens, what we've seen in the past, it's a bit about control. We can see that as many of these books are innocent books that reflect gay parents or bisexual identities, and I want to see that in my community. And we know that book bans don't protect; they restrict. They don't power; they control. The First Amendment doesn't exist so we can talk about the weather. It exists to protect speech that challenges the status quo. Censorship has always been a tool of oppression, whether it's Galileo's scientific writings, Frederick Douglass's accounts of slavery, or stories of fictional gay princes. Books threaten the closed-minded. Let's be honest, we know this is about erasing uncomfortable truths that LGBTQ people exist, because if they exist, as a just, open-minded society, we must recognize them, write about them, and include them in our literature. When we boil this down to essential components, this is about freedom and maintaining a just society. Let's save the books and ban the fascists.
Thank you. Up next is Ms. Lindsay Van Allen.
Hello, board. My name is Lindsay Van Allen. I live in Meridian. I am a tax-paying member of this community. I am a patron of this library. I am a mother of 3 children who frequent this library and are being educated in this library district and in this school district. And I am also bisexual. And my family deserves to see ourselves reflected in our community library. And I want to thank you for the work that you and the librarians of this community have done, because we do see ourselves reflected in this community. We are able to check out books that speak to our family, speak to our family's experience. And I know that that has taken courage and strength, especially in recent years. I'm curious with the group that wants to ban books and have books removed, how many books they think it takes to turn someone gay. I guess I only read half as many because I'm only bisexual. So I've got a ways to go. But I'd like a number. I'd like to get there someday. As a parent, I recognize not all books are for all people and not all books are for all ages. But that is my responsibility as a parent to determine that for my family. I don't want anybody else determining that for my family, not the government, not other people in the community. And I don't think I have the right to determine that for anyone else in the community either. But that takes stepping up and being a parent. I've had conversations with my own children that maybe that's not a book we're going to check out, or maybe that's not a book for right now, but that is the role of parents and that needs to be protected, because that should never be entrusted or outsourced to other groups. These book bans on their face are disingenuous. I have 2 teenagers, and nobody is going to the library to find scintillating material. That's not happening. Everyone has phones. Everyone has the internet. So I don't think that these bans are even about the LGBTQ community or what's in these books. They're about targeting the library, and they're about demonizing librarians, because libraries serve as a foundational organization that protects our First Amendment and stands up for free access to information. And we need to protect that within our communities. That is the foundation for democracy and for a free republic. So I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and let you know that as a community member, I oppose any bans, any efforts to restrict books, that they should be open and access to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Meredith Hotchkiss, please.
So I guess we're back and we're doing this again. I spoke at a previous meeting. I've lived here in Meridian since 2002, when the Marine Corps actually moved us here. And I was an ER nurse in Meridian, and I've taken care of many children. I've taken care of many children who were molested, and many who were have tried to commit suicide because of not having support. being of the LGBTQ community. And unlike Lindsay, I have read all those books, but they didn't do anything to me. I'm straight. The other thing is with my 4 children, and now I have 2 children in this library district, 2 grandchildren in the library district. Not once did I ever rely on a librarian to decide what was appropriate for my child. It was my job as a parent. It is not the job of the library. And any other, people who argue otherwise, it's their failure to do so. So I also wanted to make the point that I am a Jewish woman, and I've seen this before. My family talked of it from Nazi Germany, and we're not there. I appreciate the library and the education, and it's all a matter of, just knowing what your children are. And it's my responsibility as a mother and a grandmother to know what they're reading. My grandson, last time I came, was worried about Captain Underpants, which they were trying to ban because of the fact that there was a gay character in it. They also tried to ban a book about a narwhal, because they thought that it was a phallic symbol, the horn. That type of lack of education is detrimental to my children, grandchildren, and this society. And I urge you to please keep doing what you're doing, and it's very appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alyssa Porter, please.
Hello, my name is Lisa Porter, and I just want to start my comment off by saying, kind of echoing the sentiments of appreciating the library for all you do for the community and for families. One thing I love that the library has always done is focus on the social and emotional growth of children, and that's evident in the programs you offer from infants all the way up. And so my comments along those lines of continuing doing that, especially for kids that are older as well. And I echo the sentiments of our fellow community members talking about parents being involved and less responsibility in the library for what's being read. We had an incident at our elementary school recently where the bookmobile came. My daughter's in 4th grade, and this was a concern because this is an incident that happened where the parent wasn't there and the library was the one providing the books, and the librarian in the bookmobile, we were reliant on her to make sure the books were appropriate, since we couldn't be there because it happens during school time hours. And one mother received a text that her 4th grader had checked out a book that said, the white guy dies first. And so she thought that was a little weird. She messaged the teacher. The teacher took a look at it, and there was a lot of sexual content in it and racist themes, things that were not appropriate for a 4th grade level. And the teachers ended up looking at all the 4th grade books and confiscating a lot, just because the age level, not talking about content or banned books, anything like that. I agree with everybody about parents being involved and deciding that with their kids. In this case, the parents weren't there, and the kids were shopping around the different sections and even sometimes recommended books that were not appropriate for their age. And so my daughter, when she came home, one of the first things she asked was, Mom, what is intimacy? Tell me about intimacy. Because in the first couple of pages of this book she had picked up, it talked about that. And that was a conversation I wasn't ready to have with my 9-year-old or 10-year-old. She's just barely noticing boys and stuff. So I'm not afraid of the content. I'm afraid of them being exposed to things too soon and what that does for their social and emotional development. So I was just hoping that could open up a conversation of being a little more clear with the bookmobile, and also to protect you guys. She was the only adult on the bookmobile, so you've got kids saying one thing and an adult. I came to the library after to ask questions, and I was told technically we can't restrict the books that the kids want to check out. And I thought that must be, I'm not sure if that's correct. We should tighten the screws on that, just to make sure that kids are protected when the parent isn't there, and that you guys are protected against, what could be said about what happened on the bookmobile. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, David, is it Bettinger, David?
Thank you. Honestly, I didn't know when I was signing in that I was signing up to speak, but I'll take this moment to speak. I spend a fair amount of time at the legislature, and I speak in front of them often on different issues. This is my first time addressing a library board, so this is a unique opportunity for me. But recently, I was given a book to read called Two Boys Kissing. And I read the book, And in the book, I found incidents of adult men and adolescent boys involved in sexual activity. Now, I would have to look at Idaho statute, but I believe adult men and boys involved in sexual activity, intercourse, is a crime. I believe in the state of Idaho, pedophilia is a crime. This book was available to a minor in this library. Now, these books have already been outlawed by our legislature. And I was not involved in that fight. To be honest with you, I didn't care about what was going on in our library. This fight has come to me later now at this point to find out that these books that have been outlawed are still available to minors in this library. They can still come in and find aggressive acts of pedophilia as young children and walk out that door. And one of the issues that was brought to light during the testimony at the legislature by a gentleman named Chandler Hadabra was that you can't go into the Hustler store and check out pornographic material as a minor. You are ID'd. Why does this library not ID the participants that come in to check out pornographic material? Why are videos allowed to children to walk out 50 Shades of Grey out of the digital library and walk out? And I haven't seen it. I mean, I don't know. There's probably people in here that would laugh thinking that's pornographic material. But why are minors allowed things in this library that are outlawed in the private sector? And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Rachel Ward, please.
Hi, my name is Rachel Ward. I live here in Meridian, about a mile and a half away. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I come to the library very frequently with my children. I've also spoken back in 2022. It's kind of the same thing. I keep hoping for a politically neutral library. I would like for it to be a place where Republicans and Democrats are feeling that their tax dollars are being well spent. And as a conservative, when I walk in, I often see a bunch of books. The first one I noticed in 2022 was like Misread a Mystery Reader, a book about a non-binary child with a father who's going to dress in drag and go to a story time at his school. Those kinds of things that make me go, oh, I wish this wasn't here. I don't want to read this to my child. And on the flip side, a Democratic parent would come in and they won't have any books like that. My kids and I have had fun trying to make up our own titles that liberals would want banned or find offensive. Our favorite is Matt Walsh Shows Kindness. He helps AOC's abuela. Or there could be books that were like very pro-life, or if there was a book that Kira Bell wrote, she's the young lady that first brought the lawsuit against Tavistock. She's a detransitioner. If there was a book detailing her journey of being trans and then deciding that she was mistreated by doctors and became a woman again, I feel that many liberal families wouldn't want that book put out on display. So I feel it's more a matter of content than book banning. And I Googled, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm so nervous, but I Googled children's popular LGBTQ books, and I have a list of about 75 books here that I've looked up in our library system that are all present here in the library system. Oftentimes there's like 17 copies of the Tea Dragon Society. There's 3 copies of Maiden and Princess, or Sex is a Funny Word, or The Prince and the Knight, the one where they explain not all princes like princesses. And then there's a sequel to that one. Books are not being banned. And it is mostly the liberal and LGBTQ perspective that's being presented without the other side being presented. And so then the libraries become a platform, I feel, in the children's section for the Democratic National Convention's ideology. And I would just ask, I think that the library is a wonderful place. I like that they show a lot of different perspectives. I learned about a lot of different people. I liked the book on Ruby Bridges. There's a whole bunch of things I've loved a lot that I've learned. I pick them all up. I'm here with my kids. I'm not on my phone. I'm reading all the new books. And so I would just ask that you please continue to either not have those books or that you would also represent the other side and keep it a neutral place for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly Eastley, please.
Hi there. My name is Carly Easley, and I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm a fourth-generation Idahoan. I'm a nurse in this community. I am a mom and a wife. I have spent my life going to Idaho public libraries from the time I was a child all the way up until now. I take my son to public libraries, including this one. Sorry, I am a little bit nervous. To respond to the last lady, I just would like to say that she is represented.
Please speak to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Heterosexuality is obviously portrayed everywhere you look. I don't think that there's any threat of that going away. As a mom, I can tell you that whether I'm ready or not, it's my job to have hard conversations with my son, even uncomfortable ones, because our kids are being exposed to all sorts of things far beyond what a library book might expose them to. And one other comment: to associate homosexuality with pedophilia is ignorant, disgusting, and plain wrong. And I hope that gentleman is embarrassed by that.
Please keep your comments
Okay.
to the board.
Ban books is a way to bully. You cannot get rid of all of us just by getting rid of books. I can tell you that I am a lesbian, and it's not because I read a book. It's because I was born that way, and science, God bless science, actually just shows that there's homosexuality in all species. So Idaho public libraries are for all Idahoans. I know I pay taxes, and I'm a lesbian and a mom, and so I deserve the right to have books that represent myself, as do all Idahoans. And lastly, I oppose book bans, and I hope that you do too, to represent all Idahoans. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up to speak tonight. Thank you, everybody, for your civility. That's how it should go. I appreciate that a lot. Up next on the agenda is item number 3, the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are those considered to be routine, uncomplicated, and not likely to require discussion or face opposition. Supporting information for all consent agenda items is included in the trustees' monthly packets. Trustees always have the option to remove any item or items from the consent agenda for individual consideration. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the following: the approval of the January regular minutes for this board meeting, 4 job descriptions with very minor changes to each of those, and also 4 policies, also with very minor changes to the 4 policies. Are there any objections to approving all of the items on the consent agenda? Hearing no objection, the motion passes by unanimous consent. That brings us to item number 4 on the agenda, the financial report. We will turn the time over now to the library staff for this item.
You had a large financial report in your board packets this month. I apologize it wasn't in there a little sooner, but unfortunately some sick leave delayed progress there. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, everything was provided in the board report.
Questions or comments from trustees? Josh, go ahead. Yes.
Emma, I just had a question about there was a pretty substantial charge to, or payment to the City of Boise Library. I think it was $12,000 as part of the consortium expense. Was that, can we get some clarification on what that?
I'll have to defer to Emma on exactly what that is, but there's typically quarterly payments associated with the LIS, which is the catalog and the system for cataloging materials.
Okay.
And then also for courier services. So I'm not sure which of those 2 it is without looking at it. That number sounds like the courier service number, if I had to guess.
It had an annotation of hardware upgrades.
Oh, that's for Link's hardware because we had to move hardware off of the City of Boise's into the cloud. So that because we're no longer going to be hosting Link services, the LIS, at the city of Boise. And so there was stuff that it was associated with that. I would have to go back and look, though, at the specifics. Emma, do you have that pulled up?
But it was a proportional charge for all members.
Correct. There's
Fair
so
enough.
the way Links works is the 11 Links libraries share 15% equally, and then the remaining 85% is broken out per capita for each library's population served. So it's a complicated formula, but it is not as complicated. That's how we get to those big numbers.
Director Grove, I've just sent that document to you.
Yeah, this is just the routine quarterly billing.
Additional questions, comments from the trustees on the financial reports?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Josh.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the financials as published and presented.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Up next on the agenda, item number 5, the budget hearing date for fiscal year 2026 and the budget memorandum regarding that date. Director Grove.
So we have to have the board pass the date for when our public hearing on the budget will take place. As required by Idaho law, it has to be done at certain periods in time. We're going to get this one done a little earlier than is required, just to ensure that we have it in the books and communicated to the county for publication. So we are looking at, I just had it pulled up and don't have the date right in front
August
of me.
20th.
20th. Okay. It's the same day as our monthly board meeting in August. It will take place prior to the regular board meeting on the 20th.
So the action you're looking for tonight is to approve that date.
To approve that date, and by approving that, it allows us to have it published with the county.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments from the trustees?
Mr. Chair,
Trustee Knudsen.
Director Grove, thank you for setting the dates early. That's fabulous.
Mr. Trustee, I have them planned out from here on out. So glad to get it in front of you so we can get it one thing off our to-do list.
If there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the budget hearing date for
Thank you.
fiscal year 2026. Second.
Can we state the date? Just
The
for-
date, I move that we approve August 20th, 2025 as the budget hearing date for fiscal year 2026. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6, another action item. This one concerns the Cherry Lane renovation service orders with our architectural firm MSR. Director Grove.
Yes, so thank you. This is a formality that has been done for all of the building projects. It is in correspondence with the master service agreement that was approved by the board following the plant facility levy that was passed by voters in 2019 to commission the MSR architects for the capital projects that we have. And the service orders are required for each individual project. And so getting those to you so that we can continue to be in compliance with the master service agreement that had been agreed upon, and to be able to formally move forward with the work that MSR is already doing for us.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the trustees?
Mr. Chair.
Josh, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I feel it's my obligation as the board liaison to the Cherry Lane renovation project that I move formally to approve MSR Service Order 9.
Second.
Thanks. We have a motion and a second. I do have a question or comment first. I should have made that more clear. Sorry. So this is to, this is coming before us because of the dollar amount. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, correct. That is part of it, but also because it is a requirement of the master service agreement
contract.
to be able to formally move forward with the service orders related to this project specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So
Sorry.
it's both.
Okay, great. So we do have a motion and a second. Any further comments besides mine? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Josh.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve MSR Service Order 10.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve MSR Service Order number 10. Comments about that one? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Up next, item number 7 on the agenda, somewhat related to item number 6, but distinct in its own way. So we will take that as a separate item. Director Grove, please go ahead.
So we need to update some of the language that the legislature has added since we had agreed to the master service agreement, just to maintain compliance. And so we're working through that with legal and with MSR to make sure that we have all those. But this is to allow me to do that, to sign on behalf of the district for this project, essentially.
Thank you. So we have the memorandum here in our packet here. I'm going to flip through it again one more time here just to make sure I don't have any questions. While I'm doing that, any other questions from the board? So what, Nick, so this is a general question. What happens if we don't give you this authorization? It just comes to us? More decisions for the board, is that correct?
It would essentially grind everything to a halt, or we would be having special meetings once a week. So
Just to get the process going.
yeah, there's a lot that just happens throughout the course of the month between board meetings that's routine in nature, that just has to go with the monies that the board has already authorized with the budget process for the project. So the plant facility levy that was passed by voters, along with the approval of the budget in August for this current fiscal year. So not asking for any funds, just the authorization to use those funds for what it was presented as at the budget hearing.
Okay. Did we have similar situations for Orchard Park and Pinnacle? Or did the state law change? That?
Well, there's state law changed a little bit, legal counsel changed, and additionally, the mechanisms with how we were building those projects was different as well. So okay. all 4 of the projects have, with Unbound, Orchard Park, Pinnacle, and now Cherry Lane, they're all 4 completely done differently, with different mechanisms to make those projects come to fruition. So,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Christensen.
Is there a chance, Director Grove, that that you'll be keeping a list of the things that you approve of, and you could kind of report back to us on what kinds of decisions you had to make or sign on?
Yep. Yes, those will all be in the board packets as we go forward. So they will be in the financial section each time as we go, or in the additional information section. So all of it is always will always be there. So
additional questions?
Mr. Chair, Director Grove, will you include Trustee Cummings in that as well, periodically between meetings?
Yes, Trustee Cummings.
Since he's our liaison.
Trustee Cummings has been at most of the meetings that we've had with MSR, and is a great voice and able to give different perspective both in and outside of the meeting. So we include him in as many of those as we can. Not all of them, because sometimes they're spur of the moment. Let's talk about what that plug needs to look like for the bookmobile type conversation. But the big conversations we
30-prong,
have.
240 volt.
Yes. Good job.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, in light of Director Grove's impeccable fiduciary responsibility execution, I move that we approve the memorandum authorizing him as signatory authority for all matters Cherry Lane remodel with MSR.
A second.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to item number 8 on the agenda, a staff presentation. We'll turn the time over now to Jenny.
So, Mr. Chair, as Ginny is setting up, I just wanted to congratulate Ginny. She recently was moved with, I believe, last month's board meeting when we changed the salary schedule. She went from department manager to an admin manager, and Ginny is now a manager on the admin team. And so happy to have her continue her progression at the district, and I'm excited that she's able to give her presentation to you all tonight.
Great. Jenny, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Director Grove. So thanks for the opportunity to come and share some about materials circulation tonight. I was here last fall talking about materials at the new branch with the manager of Pinnacle branch. And invite me back whenever you've got a question about material numbers. I love to talk about that kind of thing. So first, though, let's start with card holders. We had a question of how many total card holders we have here at the Meridian Library District. And that number is at the bottom there on the slide, 55,413. It's probably more because I pulled this yesterday and we make cards every day. But keep in mind that for card holders, I'm talking about card holders for the Meridian Library District, even though we do have reciprocal lending with other libraries in the area. These are just Meridian branches, and that the card holders does not represent library users. As we all know, there are many, many library users who are here for programs, computer use, sitting and reading, meeting in our meeting spaces, and card holder number does not necessarily represent all of those people as well. The pie chart that I shared here, I wanted to highlight that last year, 40% of active accounts, so that's accounts that represents an individual, not a household, borrowed digital materials. So I think that's significant. As you have heard before, most digital and e-books, e-content is borrowed, is adult titles. Kids tend to pick the print books instead. And so by that many users using digital materials, that kind of just shows how much interest there is in digital materials right now. But talking more about materials, I've got the numbers for both physical items and digital items. I'm using the word items rather than books because that includes DVDs, that includes circulating kits, things like that. So again, as of yesterday, we had 204,879 physical items in the collection and 64,055 digital items in the collection. The dark part highlighted there represents how many items were checked out as of yesterday. So that's slightly more than a quarter for physical items and then 20% for our digital items. This is pretty typical for libraries. We want to have a good portion of our materials available for people, but we also don't have space to have them all in the library, and we love it when they're out in people's homes instead. I want to point out that there is a bigger percentage of physical items checked out than digital items, and part of that is kind of due to the way that those collections are maintained. So in our next slides, we're going to talk about materials coming in and materials going out. So taking the last 12 months together and averaging, those are the number of items added to our collection and the items deleted or expired. Expired, obviously, applying to digital materials, deleted, applying to physical materials. So every month we add more than 27,000 physical items to our collection. And we, last year, in the past 12 months that is, deleted less than that. So that means the shelves are getting fuller and fuller, right? And in our digital materials, the same thing. We added a great many more than expired. We're growing that collection as interest continues to grow, as I'll show you a couple more times in my slides that I brought tonight. So together we added 5,400, items to our collection, both physical and digital, per month in the past 12 months. And the next slide goes into more detail about just the January 2025 deletions. I wanted to highlight that because this is a higher end. The average that I showed on the previous slide was 2,200, I believe. And last month we deleted 4,900, almost 5,000. And you can tell from the way that we broke that down that that's mostly from the Cherry Lane branch. For those of us who have been here for the past couple of years, and for the board members who have been here, about our new branches that we've been adding and opening. And the Cherry Lane branch has not been prioritized as highly as far as collection maintenance in the past couple of years, as we've been buying those new books for the Orchard Park branch and then buying those new books for the Pinnacle branch. So there's a surge in deletions here, and that is due to our own lack of ability to get to it last year. I want to talk about deleting those materials too, because as we're choosing materials to delete, we're choosing those materials that are in bad condition, that are not circulating, and we're interested in keeping space on the shelf for those 2,700 books that are coming in every month. Something's got to go to make space for that. Okay, so this was a question that came up at the last meeting. Trustee Cummings, I believe you had asked, do we have any idea about cost per use in print versus digital? We've been talking a few times in the past year about the increase in cost for digital and the increase in interest in digital materials as well. So this is kind of a snapshot case study of just one book, the book that was our highest circulating title last year at the library, which is The Women by Kristen Hanna, the highest circulating for adults, that is. So this was published about a year ago. So this is I chose this title. It's been very popular. We've got a year to look at what those numbers are. We have a lot of copies of this book in various formats. So you can see that first column shows how many copies. The second column shows how much it costs. The third column shows how many borrows in that format we've had in the past year. So that's 12 months of use. And then that's math, right? So divide it down, and that comes to our cost per use in different formats. I want to highlight in the price column, you'll notice that print, $16.99, that's for a hardcover new book. A hardcover new bestseller costs most people who aren't libraries more than $16.99. So our vendors in print give us that break and makes that a really affordable choice for us. The opposite is true in electronic materials. Unfortunately, you can probably go on your Kindle and buy, I should have brought that number with me, but you can buy a digital copy of The Women for less than $60. The $60 pricing is library pricing, and that's going to be because the way that it's licensed to us for how many checkouts we can have. So as you can see here, if we'll go back to our cost per use, we're hovering between $1 and $3 here. Those numbers are going to keep getting smaller. We still have dozens of holds in multiple formats for this book. So we'll keep dividing it smaller and smaller as more and more people check it out over the next year and on into the future. But cost per use, the bottom line is, yeah, print is cheaper. However, digital has a high demand, and I think my next slide will detail that as well. So currently, to explain what these numbers are, these are the number of hold requests. So if you take all Meridian card holders together and how many holds they have, it's about 25,000 holds. More than 2/3 of those are in digital. So the holds are extremely high. I showed earlier that 40% of last year's users were on digital. Well, they're placing a lot of holds because we're seeing the most holds in that area. And there is some difference here in these two things. I'm comparing apples to maybe pears in a few senses, in the way that I can gather the data, in the way that our vendors tell us what's going on, and in the way that the card is used. So for physical materials, those holds are requests from Meridian patrons, but they might be filled by books elsewhere in our consortium. So when you're on the hold list, sometimes you get a book from NAMPA because that's the next one that's available. And so that's going to be true for those physical books. For our digital books, we do have reciprocal lending that we can borrow. Our card holders can borrow books from other libraries and vice versa. However, I think for all the libraries in that agreement, you can only put holds on books from your own branch. So you're able to check out a book that's sitting there waiting to be used if it belongs to a different location or a different organization. But for these holds on digital, those are all going to be filled, hopefully, by the things that we buy for them. That's the last slide I had today, but I have more numbers, and I have, if you have any questions, please let me know. Yes, Trustee Christensen.
I have a question about thank you, Jenny. This is great. I have a question about the digital expiration. Is that
Yes.
based on a date or is it based on how many checkouts it's
Both.
received?
So for the women, all of our copies are metered access copies. So that's 24 months of use, one user at a time. And no matter how many times it's circulated in 24 months, after 24 months, it goes away. The copies that we have, it looks like we bought one last February 6th, 8 more last February 9th, because that's after it dropped and that holds list skyrocketed. Another couple in March, another couple in April. So they'll be staggered out from when we bought the additional copies, which we purchased in order, we keep going back and checking that holds list. And if it's a ratio that we're not happy with, we buy more copies. I think right now the wait time, it says, currently the ratio is 3 people waiting to file every copy, but it was higher when we made those purchases. We're on the downswing of the popularity of this book for holds. And I think overall, we talked about this last month, we're at about a 27-day wait for materials on Libby and digital. But we also buy copies, depending on what they let us buy. We also can buy copies that are 1 copy, 1 user that we have in perpetuity. We can also buy copies that are metered access copies, but instead of being limited by the time frame, it'll be 100 checkouts and then you don't have it anymore, which is a really easy cost per use to calculate. I like it when we do that one, but this is a good reminder that sometimes we are limited somewhat by what a vendor or by what a publisher offers us, that I can't choose a different version of metered access for this particular title. The version that they're going to offer me is that 24-month version.
Do digital copies include both audio and like reading an ebook on your Kindle?
Those
or
are 2
device?
different. So did I separate them on that slide? I don't remember. Yes, I had ebook and e-audio. They each cost $60 or $60.59.99. But the $60 one, the ebook, is the metered access 24 months. The e-audio is 1 copy, 1 user. We have it indefinitely. So that's because that's what they'll sell. we buy what's available to us that our community is interested in. No, I'm afraid not.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Josh, please.
Jenny, this is great to see, and thank you for answering all my questions and then some. And I just want for the benefit of the folks that are here, because I often get asked, did you see this book in the library? Well, with over 150 books a day coming in, I do have a full-time job, and reading is not it. But I appreciate all that work. And just to reiterate, as those digital holds accumulate, is around 12 or 20 about the number when another copy is purchased?
Overall, thank you, Trustee Cummings. Overall, the ratio that we're aiming for as a collection is less than 12 to 1, only because that's what we have the budget for right now. In print, we have a 4 to 1 or 3 to 1, depending on the collection ratio that we're looking for.
I've got a few questions.
Yes, please.
So am I correct? 5,479 additions to the collection in an average month in the last 12 months?
Yes, for
Okay.
both digital
both
and
kinds.
physical
Okay.
items together. Yes.
I'm like Josh, I read a lot, but I couldn't read nearly that many. Now,
Neither can we.
Right. And the stats you showed are just MLD.
Yes.
Does not include all of the consortium
Correct.
libraries as well. So, and maybe my next question is kind of related to that. How does MLD decide when to purchase more? Is there some algorithm that you get an email saying, hey, the women we need more copies of the women, or what, how does that work? And then in conjunction with that, how are we sharing the load with other libraries, or do we? Do the other libraries take into account our popular books? I'm assuming they're all about the same, but.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. You're exactly right. So we often are seeing the things that are popular in Boise or Nampa are the things that are popular here as well. And so that ratio that I talked about is something that all the links libraries are aiming for similar ratios. It's more or less public library industry standard in print anyway. As for when we know to buy them, I've got a great team of collection development librarians, and part of their every other week for some collections and every week for some collections, they just go check. the list of current holds, and we not only look for how many holds there are, we'll make a report for how many items have more than 10 holds and just look at those. And then if there are any that have an extremely long wait list, we look to buy more, but we're buying more based on the holds from Meridian users. So if there's a book that everybody in Garden City is trying to read, but nobody on the Meridian, no Meridian card holders on that list, we're probably not buying another copy unless someone requests it from us.
Thank you. And is it true, so this is trivia here, if I'm on the holds list and I'm 15th on the holds list and a copy held by the Meridian Library becomes available, if all the other 14 people in line were not Meridian Library card holders, would I get to the top of the list?
That is true, Mr.
Okay,
Chair. Thank you
all
for
right.
saying so, because that's something that a lot of people don't realize about the holds, that the ILS system that Director Grove mentioned is smart enough to know that, and we will prioritize providing those holds to the card holders in the library that owns the item.
Okay, thank you. Secret library tips and tricks.
Absolutely.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair, I would add one thing. One of the things that Jenny mentioned, but bears mentioning again, is it can be really difficult with some of these like highly popular items to not underbuy based on the number of holds, but not overbuy, because eventually they're not going to be on hold anymore and they're going to have to go somewhere. And so that sometimes is, you as a former page who had to live through Harry Potter books as they came out and all of the shifting that had to happen with those, I purposely did not read them for a very long time because I had a very much hate relationship with having to shelve them, and so it can be a challenge, but it's something that their team does a very good job with. But it's something, we don't have unlimited space in Meridian, and so we have to balance those things out a little bit differently.
What's the most copies you've ever seen for a single book in our library?
Oh, I don't know if I know that answer.
50 more?
In our library, we probably don't have that many. So when you go to search, the default is to show you how many are in the whole consortium, and you're easily able to see that this or that popular title has more than 100 copies in the consortium, but maybe 50. But I will also add, thank you for bringing that up, that those digital items that I talked about, sometimes the way that they come for a kid's book, for example, the lending model that they offer us is something like a pack of 100 titles. So that way 100 people theoretically could check it out all at the same time. So sometimes the numbers of the books in digital is like, you bought so many last month. That's because we purchased one version that gave us 100 copies.
Okay. Fascinating stuff.
If
Jenny,
you have
thank
any more questions, by all means, let Director Grove know and I'll come back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, trustees.
Up next, Mr. Grove, item number 9, director updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to focus most of my director updates today on the Cherry Lane renovation. We spent a little bit of time approving some pieces of it, and I wanted to give some updates on where that is. There's additional updates beyond the Cherry Lane renovation that are in the director's report from across the district, and that will be included in the packet online if anyone's interested in those. But hopefully you're able to read through those and see all those amazing things. I will point out we did have 2 staff who have recently completed their master in library sciences at different positions throughout the district. One is a branch manager and one is an associate librarian. And so we are encouraging our staff to continue their professional development in different avenues. We have, I think we saw 5 or 6 hands yesterday that were getting tuition reimbursement for their MLS education. So just wanted to highlight that. And then with some of the comments earlier, that we are working on an MOA, which is a memorandum of agreement for when we go to schools, so that schools understand their responsibility of being responsible for the activity of the students. And our job is to provide access. And so we want to make sure that that is clearly laid out going forward. And we're working with legal to craft that so that everyone is on the same page going forward. So there's not ambiguity. But with that, I would love to jump in and talk all things Cherry Lane renovation and show pretty pictures. So to start off, the Cherry Lane renovation is the final project of the plant facility levy that the voters passed in 2019. We did 3 projects already. We had the Unbound renovation of the new building in downtown Meridian. And then we opened Orchard Park in North Meridian. And then last year we opened Pinnacle in South Meridian, which replaced the Silverstone branch. This building for Cherry Lane was built in 1996, opened in 1997. And it was built to service an anticipated population of 40,000 people. Needless to say, we have blown past that a few times. So a lot of the systems that are in this building, HVAC, electrical, fire sprinklers, things of that nature, are from when the building was built. And we are holding it together with duct tape, prayers, and a few zip ties. So it's working, but we don't know for how much longer some of these things are going to hold on. So we got to go in, and all of those things are in the walls or in the ceiling. So as those are going to require opening up all of it, we're going to make sure that we put it back, the building back together in a way that is most conducive to the needs of our community based on the community feedback that we've received over the last 7 years of doing the planning for these projects. And also looking at the parking lot, we are wanting to take the exit off of Leisure Lane and not off of Cherry Lane to reduce. Leisure Lane is to the east of us, so out this way on the other side of our east parking lot. We don't currently have access to it. But when the Hawk Light went in front of the parking lot here to the south of us, it made that entrance a little more difficult. It made passage for pedestrians across the street, especially in theory, at least the kids can use it after school. How often they actually use it is anyone's guess, but we're hoping to use it. But it's not ideally suited for our entrance, and so we want to make it better suited. And then with that, the annex that is to the east of our library over here is where the material services and most of the district resources teams work out of. And it is an old house. And when you go in there, you can definitely feel that it's an old house. It is not ideally set up for library office work. And so you all approved the lease agreement for the new facility that will be a temporary space until the Cherry Lane renovation is done. And then at which point we will look at a facility to join the admin building and the new annex building into one facility so that we have more cohesiveness with those teams going forward. But for now, the cheapest and best option is to have those split out. So that building will be coming down and will be additional parking. We can go ahead and take a look at the next slide. If we make the PIP go away, you'll see that in the bottom right corner is where the annex building is, and that will be additional parking. We'll be taking that entrance and exit off of Leisure Lane, which is on the right side of the screen. And one of the key features that we've heard loud and clear from different community focus groups over the years is the want for a drive-up book drop at this facility. We learned how to do it better based on how it kind of works at Orchard Park. And unlike Orchard Park, we have full control of this building, and it will allow us to do this a lot better so that you don't have to open your car to get out to use the drive-up book drop. And one of the main things that you'll see on this is where it says entry plaza, numbers 2 and 3, is moving the main entrance of the building from the south side of the building to the east side of the building due to where the main entrance to the library will be. We will retain the current exit on the west side of the building, which is the left side of the screen. But that's more of a secondary exit than a primary exit. And so we'll have a combined entry and exit on onto Leisure Lane, which would then access Cherry Lane directly. And so it'll make for a safer entry and exit for both drivers and pedestrians. As we look inside the building, we're looking at how to repurpose this in a way that is most conducive to how our users want to use the space. And that is not to mean that this will be what everybody wants. And that's because we have a city of over 140,000 people and everybody wants something different. So if I ask, I'll probably get 250,000 opinions on what actually should happen here. And we've tried to listen to as many people as we can to adapt our space for what is wanted, but also to adapt our space so that it can conform with the needs of the community going forward. One of the challenges in public libraries is not doing a design that locks you in to today without being able to shift to the needs of tomorrow. And so looking at that as we design the space so that it can meet the needs of our community for the next 30 years. And so as you walk in off that east side, I can't really read the numbers. I think 2 is where the holds are. When you first come into that initial space will be a holds area similar to what we have at Pinnacle and Orchard Park. And then we'll have a lounge gallery area for new books that leads to the circ desk. We have our staff area in the back. An outdoor patio is still going to be an outdoor patio, but it will not have the pond, I'm hoping, because that is not something I want to have to maintain because it tends to break very quickly. So we'll be taking that out. But one of the things you'll really notice in this is the large program room, but also the large classroom, and then some of the meeting rooms and study rooms. And the reason we have all of those is over the last 5 years in particular, those have been the most used spaces in our buildings. I was just out at Pinnacle today, and they said that their study rooms, for example, are in use every single day. That their program room where the staff host programs is rented out by the public at least 2 to 4 times a week. And so we know that space is at a premium. And so we are balancing out the needs of space and collection and making sure that we do a good job of being responsive to the needs of the community with this design. So this is a mock-up of what that entrance would look like on the east side of the building where we currently have the auxiliary parking. And that auxiliary parking will become the primary entrance. As we go through, this is the holds area. This is the main view when you kind of walk in. This will be looking to the right when you walk in. This would be the main view walking in the door. All these are mock-ups, by the way. So these are placeholders for what things are going to be. Right now, we're getting the design in place. We spent countless hours trying to figure out where the outlets go, because that sounds silly, but it's a really, really important piece to being able to figure out how you set up your space. And so this is that main gallery area. As you can see, that vaulted, we can go back one, that vaulted area. If you go out into the building right now and to look up, there's this massive dome. And it's really cool looking, but it's really awful because if you stand on one end and listen, you can probably hear what someone's saying on the other end. It's not well designed for public use space, at least not in the sense that people don't come into this library in particular and have an expectation of pure quiet. We're across the street from a middle school. We're down the street from multiple other schools. It's a very busy space, and so noise does carry, and so we're going to be squaring off that dome a little bit and doing sound treatment so that it doesn't have some of those problems going forward. One of the things that we have leaned into over the last few years is going away from a main library model to a branch system model. And so with that, not having multiple service points in the building, we'll have one centralized circ desk where staff will work out of, but the expectation will be that staff won't be solely anchored to that space, but also roaming throughout the building to help patrons where they are. Another look at what that circ desk will look like and kind of where it's situated. And then probably not great for here, but it shows kind of what this looks like for staff looking out from the circ desk and the view lines that they're going to have. So that was one of the most important things for me, was making sure that we had great sight lines to as much of the building as possible from one centralized location. We're confined to the limits of what this building is. So, you know, it's not perfect, but this is about as close as you can get with what we have to work with. This is a view of the children's section. So this is actually this room right here that we're in, minus the wall that's at the TV that I'm looking at least, where we have our automatic handling station. And we have a few different pieces that are going to be programmed into the children's area here. Both an active children's area, a sensory space, but unlike Orchard Park, it won't be its own room. We found some challenges with having competing needs in a closed room space. And so lessons learned from that building. And every project we learn a little bit more and try to incorporate and adapt to how people actually use the space versus how it's drawn on paper. And so this is the children's section. And then beyond that, we can go next one. This is looking at it from the exact opposite angle. So essentially looking towards where the board is sitting is where this is. This is the wellness room. That would be towards the front of the building. And those wellness rooms have been well received across the district as non-bathroom private spaces that people can use for nursing or taking insulin or getting away and recentering if they're having a really stressful time, or prayer. We've had people use them for all of those reasons, and so it's important that we make those spaces where people don't have to go sit in a bathroom to have that level of privacy. And that's the hallway to the bathrooms. So one of the things right here, we can keep it here. Sorry, I'm making him jump around, but this is the current lobby, and this is where we currently have the main bathrooms for the Cherry Lane facility. If we go back one slide, one of the things that we've had a lot of good reception to in our buildings is having single-use bathroom facilities rather than large multi-use bathroom facilities. And that allows us to have the benches in those for both children, but also adult dependent care that might need to have a bench station for changing or for sitting, whatever it might be. And this allows us to have meet the needs of all of our community at the same time. And then this is the current lobby. This will be a large classroom space, and looking at how we can utilize the space to connect with people. We might be able to do some kitchen work activity in here. And because this building is 27,000 square feet versus the 16,000 of Orchard Park or the almost 12,000 of Pinnacle, we have a little bit more opportunity to create some unique opportunities for the public to engage with the library in different ways. This is the teen space that is currently over in the children's area. And there's different seating areas. If we go to the next slide, different hangout areas. And then one more. This is a look from the teen space down towards the adult space. And there are study rooms, but also study nooks. So we can go right here. There's different uses that allow people to either have a reserved room to go in and study as individuals or small groups, but the same for just drop-in study areas for people to go and have a space to work on their projects. This is next to the west entrance, looking at putting computers in there. And then you can see behind it, and with the next slide, a classroom in one of what is now staff area. But this will be a reservable space, and also a space in which we can use to hold smaller classroom style education series. This is looking at the large conference room, large program room, I should say. And that is where in the future we will have board meetings. We can go ahead and go in. It will have seating for up to 200 people. And we're still kind of figuring out exactly what orientation is going to be best. As you can see, there's multiple height differences within the room. There's columns that are in this room. Those things can't be changed. And so we have to make sure that we design around those in a way that is as functional as possible and has the ability to adapt the space to different needs. One of the things we'll be doing is putting a curtain along that section where you can see the large column on the left side of the screen a little bit, and that will separate it into two spaces, and it'll be about 2/3 on one side and about 1/3 of the space on the other side. But then we'll have the ability to rent out or do programs on either side of that curtain and make it into a multi-use space. Another look at the front of the building. When you come in, we'll have new books and things like that there. And then the last two slides are going to be the staff work area. And so currently we have 1, 2, 3, if you don't count closets, at least 3 spaces that staff are currently working in. I think we got people out of closets finally. I know I've worked in a few of them here. And so giving staff the proper spaces to work and to have the space that they need to do that work, to prepare for the services and programs that we provide to the community. And then the last slide is the automatic handling station. We will no longer have the current machine that we bought in 2013. So that machine is well past the stage of repair. We have a hard time finding repair parts for it. It just does not stand up to the needs of our community any longer. And so we have the Linxos brand that we'll be installing with this project that we've already installed at Pinnacle and at Orchard Park. And we have a lot of good rapport with the company, and it is adaptable to meet our needs. It's very flexible in how it can be configured. So looking forward to that. It'll also be where the courier will come in. So we have 2 different types of courier. We have our internal courier, which is done by our home delivery drivers, and they go to all of our locations each day and deliver things that are internal for MLD. But then we also have the Lynx courier that goes to all 11 Lynx libraries now and allows for the transfer of physical materials between the different libraries in our Lynx consortium. And we, some days like today, get really large shipments that staff then process by sticking them onto the conveyor belt and checking them in and getting them allocated to the different locations that they need to go. And here's some numbers. These are very preliminary numbers. We are working on lowering a good number of these, especially the bottom one. That is a placeholder number that was constructed using numbers based on the Orchard Park project primarily. And we will have a significantly lower cost than what is projected here based on what we're looking at. But a large number of items that will be purchased for that owner cost tracking piece will actually not be done until we get much closer to the end of construction. And so it won't be in this fiscal year, and it's not going to be coming out of the capital repair and replacement budget, and most of it won't be coming out of the plant facility levy it will be pieces that we will be working into the next 2 fiscal years. And so one of the pieces that will come up on timeline wise is going to elaborate why that's important from a functional standpoint. And so we do have three different sources of money for the project. We have our general fund, which is just what we use every year to run the library. And we can allocate different pieces during the budget building process to go towards what it needs to go to in a future fiscal year or for the upcoming fiscal year. We also have a repair and replacement fund, which we can contribute to, but it can only go towards the repair and replacement of capitalized items such as a building. It can't go towards new construction, but it can go to new construction that is a repair or replacement of something that's already there. And then the plant facility levy can go towards the capital project that it was allocated for, which was at this point Cherry Lane. And because of how we structured the Pinnacle deal, we have that money to use now versus waiting 5 years to have access to that money. So being very intentional with how we've done these projects allows us to make them come to reality for the community in a much faster timeline than we had originally hoped for. And so we have those 3 buckets to use towards getting to this. Yeah. Long way of saying it's complicated, but it's there. So this is the design development phase. This is a fairly zoomed in piece. There's a lot there. I'm not going to try and go into all of it, but needless to say, this is all of those little dots are usually a meeting of some kind. We've done a lot. We're getting through quite a bit. If we go to the next one, that whole section is summed up in that dark green section right there. And so we're looking at that whole design development piece in dark green at the top. And so we got a long ways to go before we're completely finished with the project. On the next slide, I tried to pull out key pieces of the last few slides to put some dates to this. I will caution, everything here is 100% not set in stone. This is a lot of guesswork because we don't have the permits pulled. We don't have a lot of the next pieces. This is really just to give a heads up for what we're thinking. But until we get through March, I'm not going to have anything even close to established for actual dates. These are projections, and once we hit construction, the further out, reopen or purchase or substantial completion, those are so far out that those are our guesses. But I'm not going to come out and say we're going to do this date and we're going to be reopened this date. Like it's just there's too many unknowns to be able to definitively say this. But looking at the first part, we're going through the design development right now. That's nearly complete. We'll start the permitting processes in March and April. And then looking at right now, if we get through some of those permitting pieces, the initial pieces, the way that we're mapped out to do, we would anticipate wanting to have the last day of Cherry Lane open to the public be May 23rd. And I say that for a couple of different reasons. One is that's the last day of school for West Ada School District. It is also the day of our summer reading kickoff party. And construction is scheduled to begin in early July. And so we have to box everything up and get it out of the building and get it to the other branches, get it into storage. There's 30 years of stuff in this building, and I will guarantee there are things from 30 years ago still in this building somewhere. So we got to get all of it out. And we don't really want to start summer reading program for a week or two here and then try and convey to the people that get into that routine that, all right, we did 2 weeks and now we're closed to have you come here. And I don't want to create that confusion. for the public and for staff to try to explain to the public on a constant basis. So that's why that number's out there. Again, not set in stone, but that's what I'm proposing today, but not requesting anything be done, just throwing it out there. Substantial completion, the architects are anticipating having it done at the last day of the fiscal year for fiscal year 26. We'll see. I've been through these enough to know I don't trust that last 5% of construction. That last 5% takes about as long as the first 95% sometimes. And so, we'll see. But the biggest reason that we won't open when that is done is, one, substantial completion doesn't mean completion. There's so many doors and things that won't be done. But the other thing is we need to spread some of those owner tracked costs over multiple fiscal years. And so our fiscal year starting in October 1st of 2026 will be when we purchase a lot of those items. And typically those larger furniture items take about 8 to 12 weeks of lead time once they're purchased. And so we're probably looking at getting those in sometime between Thanksgiving and New Year's at best, is kind of where we're at. And so my hope is that we would be able to open sometime between January and March of 27. Sounds a really long time, but there's a lot. Doing a remodel renovation is a lot more complex than doing a brand new build, unfortunately. And there's a lot of 30-year-old systems and equipment that have to be redone. So I think that should be it for all of my pieces of it. And I will take a pause, go back. You go back one. Okay. I will pause there before having Vasile jump in with the staff aspect of it, but happy to try and answer questions.
Thank you, Nick. That's a great, thorough discussion or overview. Any questions from the trustees? Laura, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Director Grove, this is a weird, silly question, but I'm concerned about the curtain in the classroom space. I know you don't mean like literally a curtain. I think you mean like it's called a curtain, but it's more soundproof and movable, not necessarily an accordion, but like a mobile wall kind of thing? Or what does that look like?
Well, Trustee Knudsen, actually it is more curtain-like.
Okay.
It's a very thick room dividing curtain, but it is a much more flexible material than, let's say, like the board material that you have behind you. That's a movable wall. It will not be a movable wall. It will be a curtain. And the reason for that is the square footage that it takes to store that is pretty high. And we have some weird spaces out there because of that vaulted ceiling, because of those columns. We don't have, and then the west side of that room, we have some really weird limitations because of how the building was originally built that aren't conducive to another building mechanism. So that's where we're at. Doesn't mean that we can't change it, but that's where we're at currently.
Or do we have concerns about sounds and limiting that the sounds limiting the room use?
That was one of my major concerns as well, and we were talking about doing a double hung system to further to limit that. But for now, that's the best cost-effective solution that we have. That's the other piece that we're running up against is we do have a finite amount of money, and we're already trying to find new ways to limit some of the architectural flair or options that will come in new later phases and things like that. So the bookmobile, for example, is currently outside, not inside. Would we like it to be inside? We would, but we just don't have the funds to do that. So some of these decisions unfortunately do come down to money.
Destiny, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Nick, thank you for the thoroughness of the presentation. I'm seeing a lot of places where we are highlighting sort of the potential of libraries in our community and things that we're hoping to expand and what we think libraries should look like moving forward. One thing that I've heard from folks in the community is worrying about the loss of sort of the charm of an older library branch and worrying that it'll look too modern. And aside from, I think the mock-ups looking stark for a reason, it's all sort of generic add-ins. I think it looks like it's going to retain a lot of its charm, and I think it'll be a really good, comfortable feeling space for folks. So I appreciate that as well.
Sure. I would say that was a lot of feedback that we heard from a number of people during our focus groups time. And the architects did a really great job of using a color palette that is representative of our natural surroundings to try and bring some of that warmth home, and to also reflect some of the sentiments that people had with wanting to have a more homey feel. And so using more wood tones and incorporation of color a little bit more than we did in the Orchard Park project.
Okay, should we go on?
All right, Mr. Chair, trustees.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on just a second.
Yes,
Oh.
sorry.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Sorry,
Jessica.
Mr. Chair and Director Grove. One of my favorite parts of the library is the local art that will be placed, that is placed around by the computers and in the entrance here. I'm wondering if that's still going to be part of the library's future.
Trustee Christensen, I don't know specifically if it's going to look like it does now, but we have worked with the Arts Commission for the city to make sure that we are incorporating art into the project overall. In terms of having a rotating piece like we do now, I don't know. I think that'll probably come once we get settled in and know our ins and outs a little bit. So I would say that probably I wouldn't expect it as an opening day thing, but within the first year, I would imagine that based on community feedback that the staff will want to incorporate it somehow. But from an architectural standpoint, it hasn't been incorporated to that extent.
Lucille, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the question that we also need to answer is, with Cherry Lane closing for 6 to 8 quarters, what do we do with all the staff? So we've devised a plan that is about 80% at best for what to do with all the staff while the building's closed. So there's several determining factors. Staff attrition and availability. We are effectively in a sort of hiring freeze at the moment. As we get ready to close the building, we are not hiring for many positions. That way there are more vacancies, and staff who will be available when Cherry Lane closes could be assigned to other branches. Correct. Yes. So this is a district-wide hiring freeze. Thank you, Nick. So operational demands at other branches. What these points try to illustrate is that throughout this process, we may have to pivot at times. So we have a plan that we think will work to keep staff busy and to help staff the other branches and to do many great things. But there's so many evolving things in our landscape, emerging community and patron needs, the length of the project. They may finish early, they may take longer, new opportunities that we see, both internal and external, and plenty of project and committee workload for our staff. So you may have seen our Pride and Joy, our organizational chart for fiscal year 25. So we have now about 114 staff members, and Cherry Lane, highlighted on the bottom left here in gray, makes up a big piece of that. If you really take time to, yes,
so
please.
Those 114 are not full-time employees.
That is correct.
Okay, so
Thank you for clarifying. So Cherry Lane, if you look at the teams in that staffing model, a lot of them are built in a way where they reflect each other, they mirror each other throughout the different branches. So what this allows is for teams to be rotated in and out during the closure. So Cherry Lane is about 37 people right now. They might have a few less with the recent hiring freeze. So that's about 34% of our staff that we're going to have to, find homes for. I keep telling my branch managers, you guys are going to need to be good hosts, and they're going to need to be good guests, because we all want to get along here. For those of you who know libraries with multiple branches, it's the same job, but it looks different based on the location, on the service points, on the collection, on the services offered, all of that. So if you look at this, and I should have done a better job highlighting them, but we have 4 teams here. We have the branch managers team. That's team 1 up top. That's our associate librarians and librarians. And Nick, I am a bit colorblind, so please, pink and dark blue. Thank you. Then we've got the 3 branch managers that have our pages and library assistants. And those are the other colors. I know yellow and green at the bottom. What else? All right. Thank you, Grandpa. That's a recessive gene, I've heard. Okay, next slide, please. So what we plan to do is quarterly rotations for the teams. So if we look at the 5 quarters I've presented examples for, is if team 2 starts at Pinnacle quarter 1, quarter 2, they're going to go to special projects, to Orchard Park. Quarter 3, special projects. Quarter 4, back to Pinnacle, and repeat. So we're going to rotate teams. That's going to be really good for our staff who don't usually work at other branches. Our staffing model as it stands is most staff are working just out of one branch. So what we hope this will sharpen their skills, getting used to working in different locations, serving different parts of our community. Something important to note is team 1, you see they're consistent at the bottom there. So that's our programmers. They're going to be focusing on a lot of programs and outreach. With this branch being closed, we want to deploy the bookmobile more into parks, into other community spaces. We are working on our Sprinter van, which we hope to do mobile computer lab pop-ups and other things like that throughout our community to make up for the lack of this space being open. So as you see, their rotations don't look the same, but they will be in and out of the other branches for coverage, helping with programs and other library initiatives. Next slide, please. So what does that look like? If you look at highlighted in yellow, that's our different teams. So if team 1 is doing programs and outreach, team 2 would be at Pinnacle, team 3 at Orchard Park, team 4 on special projects. Unbound is very small and can't host a whole team, but we may send a few staff members over there, whether on a quarterly or permanent basis during this project, to help out and allow them to get out and do more community outreach and events. And within this quarterly rotation, what we hope to do is committee breakouts, team trainings, and additional coverage. So there's going to be not just the quarterly rotation, but rotations within that. And Dan, if you would go next slide, please. Thank you. So this staffing model on the left, let's say it's Pinnacle or Orchard Park, they have the same exact staffing model. So if you look at the team highlighted in gray, it mirrors the team highlighted in yellow. So if Cherry Lane team 3 is subbed in to said branch, then we could pull that whole team out for team trainings for a week, for committee work for 2 weeks, smaller sections than the quarterly rotation. So that is the plan, to keep staff active, engaged, and working on meaningful projects. And what do those projects look like? Document digitization, This is a 30-year-old branch, and there's a lot of paper, files, and documents. We want to digitize all of those. Digital storage cleanup and organization. If you spend time looking through our drive trying to find old documents, it is not the best organized. So hoping to get staff working on that. Supply and material inventory. This is something that we really want to dial in from a fiscal perspective. Why buy more pencils if we have 500 pencils in the office there? Or why, how many machines do we have, just to really dial that in. And training materials, guides, and videos. What our staff have really called for is better onboarding and training procedures. That's something, with the amount of turnover and the rapid growth our organization has had, it's something that we do, but we can do better. And so really getting staff together, doing committee work, and putting together training materials, guides, videos for orientations and for professional development will be really beneficial to build a foundation for our teams going forward. And lastly, Jenny did an amazing presentation. You saw we have so many checkouts and library cards in the district, but we really want to ramp up. We really want each Meridian resident to have a library card. So finding creative ways to do that, to get out into our community, to work with the schools, to work with retirement centers, all that stuff to really continue to push literacy and get library cards in people's hands. So that's just a really quick summary of what we're hoping to do during this closure and how we hope to do it. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions or comments for Vasile? Just go ahead.
Yeah, Assistant Director, I'm sorry, tell me your name again.
Vasile.
Vasile, okay. Vasile, my guess is this wasn't a curtain that you just unveiled and the employees, say here at here in Cherry Lane or other places, this isn't the first time your employees have heard this. They've already been kind of exposed to this plan.
Yeah.
What is the feedback that you've received from your employees?
Largely
regarding this plan?
largely positive. I think, change is here, whether we like it or not. This library needs a renovation, and we want to keep people busy, active, and employed. And what better way to do that than to really have them hands-on and to really allow us both internally and externally to ramp up our efforts to create a strong organizational culture, but also to really get out into the community, promote literacy, library cards, programs, and all the great stuff we do. So I think staff, we presented this during our staff development day the other day, and staff, I've gotten nothing but positive feedback, but I've only heard, word of mouth. So I'm sure there's a few people who don't love the idea of leaving Cherry Lane, but this is, the best we could do considering the building will be closed.
Mr. Chair.
Josh, go ahead.
Vasile, I think it's an excellent plan. This is kind of highlighting the dividends that are being paid with the big personnel reorganization and structural changes that Nick onboarded a couple of years ago now. It takes me back to my time in the military when I see a squadron, fighter pilot squadron, organized in just the same way with teams and interchangeable parts, which sometimes actually do interchange. I would have to say that there's a couple of resources I'd like you to put on your radar, because if I was a member of staff and you told me I was going to be doing document digitization, I'd probably stab my eyes out with a pencil, because that's brutal, it sounds like. But I know the Meridian Library Foundation and the Friends of the Library are two organizations that could probably use some manpower assistance, or as they have events going on, or book sales, or sometimes it's new ideas, and if some of those ideas come from paid staff, augmenting the work of the volunteers, one of which is in the audience at least, I think that would be probably good use of time and resources, as opposed to drawing unemployment. So, good job.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Nick, did you have something else?
I was just going to jump in because I had one more slide, and it was about the foundation, but it ties in with all of this. And the foundation has done a great job at raising funds. I was talking to the executive manager for the foundation, and they have raised in their 5 years of being an organization $1 million for the Meridian Library District. The work that they're doing is absolutely phenomenal, and we lean on them for being able to do the core pieces of what we're doing, especially with these capital projects, but also as we have out at Pinnacle with the picture there, additional pieces that enhance the core services that we provide, and provide that sense of home, that sense of community, that sense of space that is a key to making these places not just a space that's out in the community, but a space of the community. And so I just wanted to highlight what the work that the foundation is doing, has done, and is continuing to do to support the efforts at the Meridian Library District.
Great. Nick Vasile, thank you for your report. Always good to hear those things. We have 2 items left on the agenda. One will take a little bit of time, perhaps. The other one will be fairly short, but trustees, how are we doing? Does anybody need a 5-minute recess? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead then. That brings us to item number 10 on the agenda tonight. This is a request for reconsideration of an item in the library's collection. The item to be considered tonight is a book entitled Prince and Knight by the author Daniel Hawk. Before we get into the discussion and action item itself, please allow me to review the context of this agenda item and our options to be considered. Please pardon me for reading much of this. It's important information that I want to make sure I cover so that everyone here, trustees and audience members alike, understand the board's role in the matter. The Meridian Library District has a collection development policy approved by the board and posted on our website. As Jenny told us tonight, a collection is simply a library lingo for things you can check out. It's a little more than that, but that's good enough for tonight. A collection development policy says, here are the guidelines for purchasing the items that people can check out. We've had a collection development policy in place for many years, long before I joined the board 6 years ago, as do all serious libraries. The collection development policy also guides the selection of materials that are removed from the library's collection. And as Jenny told us tonight, the most common reason for removing an item is it just doesn't get checked out. The Meridian Library staff and Board of Trustees adhere to this collection development policy. It is reviewed regularly and revised as needed, including recent additions last year after passage of the Children's School and Library Protection Act, sometimes referred to as HB 710. Part of the provisions of that law include steps patrons can take should they find material in the collection that they believe is in violation of Idaho law. So I was going to talk about the number of books in the collection, but we already heard that tonight. But again, much of our collection, I think Jenny said 25% or more, is checked out at any given time. So what you see out here is only a sampling of what's actually in the collection. District policies and state law, in the case of requests stemming from the Children's School and Library Protection Act, require transparency in reviewing requests for reconsideration. The procedures for filing a request are on our webpage. Patrons can print the form there or pick up a copy from a staff member at any branch library. The request itself is a two-part form. Part one is essentially what we've always had, an opportunity for a patron to ask for a book to be moved or removed for any reason not covered by the Children's School and Library Protection Act. Section 2 is to cover the points specifically covered by that act. Once a request for reconsideration is received, it becomes part of the public record. Submitters acknowledge they understand it will become a public record as part of the form that they sign. A copy of the submitted request is linked to on our website. You can see tonight's submitted form there if you want. And as the steps unfold, the library's formal review will also be posted there, along with any decisions on the matter rendered by the board. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, the item on tonight's agenda is a request for reconsideration of the book Prince and Knight by the author Daniel Hawk. This book is currently shelved in the children's section of the Cherry Lane and Orchard Park branches. The patron filing the request asks for the book to be shelved in the adult section of the library. I'm going to quote now directly from our policy page. The burden is on the censor to prove that specific materials meets the definition of material harmful to minors. The board will fairly and impartially adjudicate claims that materials in the collection meet the statutory definition of material harmful to minors, but will apply the statutory definition closely to ensure access to protected speech is not illegitimately restricted. Adequate procedural safeguards, including judicial determinations, are necessary to ensure protected speech is not infringed. End of quote. To follow these steps of fairly and impartially adjudicating the claim, the request was first reviewed by senior library staff. A written report and recommended action was prepared by the library director. That written report was reviewed by the district's attorney. That report is in trustees' information packets distributed in preparation for this meeting. And please note, the written report will this written report will be posted on the web portal on the same timeline as all other supporting materials for this meeting are posted. So it's not going to be there tonight. The person making the request will be notified of any actions taken by the board on the matter as soon as is reasonably possible. The statute gives us 2 months. So this particular request came in, I believe, on February 8th. That would give us until April 8th to finish this. Is that right? February, March, April. Close. Okay. So as I said, the person making the request will be notified of any actions taken by the board on the matter as soon as is reasonably possible. Our decision also becomes part of the public record. All right, so to summarize the director's written response, the recommendation is that Prince and Knight remain in the collection and remain shelved in the children's section. The board tonight, we can do several things. We can adopt the library director's written response and recommended decision as its own, with or without modification, or the board can issue its own decision. The question before trustees tonight is, in simple terms, does this book rise to the level of harmful to minors as intended by Idaho Statute 18-1517B? To meet that standard, the book would have to meet each of the following three criteria as outlined in the aforementioned Idaho law and the U.S. Supreme Court. This is the criteria we are called to apply tonight. Material will be classified as being harmful to minors when it, 1, depicts or describes representations or descriptions of nudity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement, or sadomasochistic abuse, which are patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community with respect to what is suitable for minors. 2, when considered as a whole, appeals to the prurient interest of minors as judged by the average person, applying contemporary community standards. And number 3, when considered as a whole, and in the context in which it is used, does not possess serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors based on a national standard. At the conclusion of our discussion tonight, the wording of a possible motion can be as simple as 1, moving to follow the requester's request that the book be reshelved. 2, moving to concur with the library director's written recommendation that the book remain in the children's section and in the collection. Or 3, moving to follow some other action of the board's choosing. Thanks for letting me get through all that. I'll open it up now to questions and discussion from the trustees. There is no minimum or maximum time required to discuss this. It can go quickly. It can take a long time, no matter, take as long as we like here.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Destiny, go ahead.
This is the first request that we've had since the bill was passed last year. And I noticed in looking at the materials that the entirety of the request was not completed, which was a little disappointing. You know, our library staff and board are committed to a good faith review of these requests, and section 2 of the request form clearly lists the criteria that are required to exist to qualify as harmful to minors. I would say that the intent of the form is not to make the process more cumbersome than it needs to be, but it's to invite library patrons to engage with the board and the staff in this good faith process. And so I would encourage the community to use this process for legitimate concerns rather than an outlet for sort of expressing opinions or biases toward certain sexualities, ethnicities, any other criteria than that listed in the actual bill. It's not a good use of our library staff's time. It's not a good use of our volunteer board's time. And it is certainly not a good use of taxpayer funds to have to review requests for reconsideration based on criteria that clearly do not meet the definition of harmful to minors based on this law. So that would be my comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Trustee Hart, you mentioned of the fact that the part 2 of the form had not been filled out completely. It was, however, signed, and because of that, on recommendation of our attorney, we decided to treat this as if it had been filled out in its entirety.
Mr. Chair.
Trustee Cummings, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to begin by thanking Director Grove for his very well thought out memorandum for record. that explained his perspective, which I agree with 100%. Having said that, I move that we approve Director Grove's recommendation and keep this book in the children's section.
Thank you. We have a motion.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? All right. We will do this as a roll call vote by name. Trustee Cummings.
Aye.
Trustee Hart.
Aye.
Trustee Knutson.
Aye.
Trustee Christensen.
Aye.
And I, Trustee Kohler, also vote aye. Thank you. I will notify the requester of the board's decision in writing. If the requester disagrees with the decision and wishes to pursue it further, the next steps are outlined in Idaho law. That brings us to item number 11 on the agenda, future agenda items. For this will be for our March meeting. Nick, I imagine we'll have the regular rotation of policies and such. Anything else that's already on the calendar?
Let me double check as I look, but we do have our regular rotation of policies and agendas, or policy and job descriptions. So just since we have a larger crowd than normal, every month we review a set of job descriptions and policies on an annual basis. And now that we've gone through them for the last 2 years, the reason most of them end up on the consent agenda is because we've done a lot of due diligence in getting those to a point where they're reviewed, but they don't need to be modified very much. And so, but it's because we have eyes on them at least once a year. And so we will have a set just like we normally do. And I am pulling up I have it already pulled up, list. I don't have anything overly big planned for next month so far, but open to any requests for presentations or other items that you would like to have brought forth.
I'd certainly like to see a little more on Cherry Lane, as it's somewhat of a moving target. Just let us know where the target is next month.
I will most definitely do. I probably will not have anywhere near the level of presentation that I did this month, but I will provide whatever updated information I have.
Thanks. Anything else from trustees?
Mr. Chair,
yes,
Nick,
please.
I wonder if it would be possible, not necessarily next month, but in a future month, to have a presentation from the Friends of the Library or the Library Foundation at one of our meetings.
I will request it. I can easily, I think, probably get the foundation here, and I will relay the request
The Friends are
for the
busy.
Friends. So I will put out a request and see what we get back.
Great. I appreciate the community interest in library board meetings, and I think we should take advantage of that by, talking to the board, but also letting the public know how they can support the Meridian Library, particularly with our renovations to Cherry Lane that are coming. Lots of opportunities to invest in that renovation and invest in our community.
Last chance. Okay, 8:54, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.